Within a week of you being named on the VP ticket, the Democratic nominee changed. And you guys seem to be struggling a little bit with how to approach the new dynamic. How are you approaching your new opponent and the new ticket?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty straightforward, actually. We're running against a set of policies that I think have failed the American people, and we're running to a set of policies, President Trump's 4 years in office, that I think really succeeded for the American people. And I think that what's different about it, and you're right, Dana, it is different, but what's different about it is that we're running against a different person who a lot of Americans just don't know. And so I think we have to remind people that President Trump delivered lower prices, lower inflation, a prosperous and peaceful world, and also a secure border. And Kamala Harris's policies have produced the exact opposite. Now, that was an easier case to make when Joe Biden was in there because people associate Joe Biden with the policies. But I think Kamala Harris clearly owns the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, especially when we consider the fact that, as we've all learned over the last few months, Joe Biden clearly isn't capable of doing the job. And so I think that drives home that Kamala Harris really has been the one calling the shots. I mean, how could she not? I think Joe Biden doesn't really know where he is.
Oh, wow, guys. Senator J.D. Vance straight up destroys CNN anchor Dana Bash during this interview, guys. Now, I want you guys to watch some of the very, very impressive moves that are made by Senator J.D. Vance, okay? Hats off to J.D. Vance for standing firm. If you guys haven't already, please take a second, hit the like button for the video. I totally appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. For those of you guys who are already subscribed, thank you for making sure you're still subscribed. And thanks so much for sharing these videos on Facebook and Twitter. Like, whether it's taking on liberal media, defending veterans, or challenging the narrative that is ultimately being spun and framed by the likes of liberal media, Kamala Harris, and even Tim Walz, J.D. Vance he's literally proving himself to be a very formidable force in the political landscape. And I can understand why Donald Trump chose J.D. Vance to be his running mate and potential vice president of the United States. But guys, we're going to be talking about this strong media presence, like how J.D. Vance is not backing down when he's confronted by a lot of this biased reporting that we've been seeing, and why his persistent stand against the media's defense of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz is just so crucial, guys. From basically calling out stolen valor to questioning Kamala Harris's judgment, J.D. Vance, he's going in and he's showing them exactly why he's a key player right alongside former President Donald Trump. So I want you guys to watch this interview with me with J.D. Vance on CNN being interviewed by Dana Bash.
Kamala Harris has been calling the shots. As who?
Well, I think she has to have been, right? Because if she's not calling the shots, Dana, then who is? And I do think it drives home something that's fundamentally dishonest about the way that Vice President Harris and also a lot of senior Democrats have approached this. If you remember, for months, even years, the argument was that Joe Biden was sharp, he could clearly do the job, and the minute that he performed poorly in that debate and he became political dead weight, you have Kamala Harris and everybody else trying to throw him overboard. But I think the more troubling question is, why did so many senior Democrats, including the vice president, cover for him? And if Joe Biden wasn't capable of doing the job, as even a lot of Democrats say now, was Kamala Harris in charge or was somebody else in charge? And that's a real issue.
There's no evidence that Kamala Harris threw him overboard. But I want to move on to something that Governor Walz has called you and Donald Trump, and that is weird.
Sure.
And it is taken off. The New York Times reports that when Donald Trump was asked about it, he said, "Not me, they're talking about JD."
Well, certainly they've levied that charge against me more than anybody else, but I think that it drives home how they're trying to distract from their own policy failures. I mean, look, this is fundamentally schoolyard bully stuff. They can accuse me of whatever they want to accuse me of. As Harry S. Truman once said, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. And I'm doing this because I think that me being vice president will help improve people's lives. So I accept their attacks, but I think that it is a little bit of projection, Dana. If you think about just take a couple of days ago. Tim Walz gives this big speech. He's been announced as the VP nominee. And I remember when I had just been announced as the VP nominee, I gave my big speech and I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug and a kiss because I love my wife and I think that's what a normal person does. Tim Walz gave his wife a nice, firm Midwestern handshake and then tried to sort of awkwardly correct for it.
I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Waltz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh yeah, weird.
So I think that what it is two people, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who aren't comfortable in their own skin because they aren't comfortable with their policy positions for the American people. And so they're name calling instead of actually telling the American people how they're going to make their lives better. I think that's weird, Dana, but look, they can call me whatever they want to.
Now, let me tell you, JD Vance, he's proving himself to be a top-notch vice presidential candidate right here, right alongside former President Donald Trump. Guys, his strengths, I mean, you guys are seeing it. They're undeniable. And it's very clear why Donald Trump picked JD Vance for this ticket. Now, first off, let's talk a little bit about JD Vance's very strong media presence, right? Now, this guy, he's clearly a force to be reckoned with in these interviews. He doesn't shy away from these tough questions like Kamala Harris or the challenging situations that he's actively seeking them out, and he's calling out the interviewer when she steps out of line and tries to like reframe what he's saying, right? Unlike Kamala Harris, who basically seems to be avoiding the media at all costs, JD Vance, he's out there, guys. He's out in the trenches. He's engaging with the press. He's speaking his message, and he's making sure that his voice is being heard. And this is the leadership that we need here in America. And speaking of Kamala Harris, right? I mean, let's not forget about the direct confrontation that she had with JD Vance. Think about it. When she arrived on Air Force Two, JD Vance, he didn't hesitate to run up and challenge her. He straight up called her out, ready to discuss the issues face to face. But of course, what did Kamala Harris do, right? She avoided all the confrontation, just like she always does, trying to avoid answering any kind of tough questions because she doesn't have a script. Without a script, she can't perform. And it's very clear that she's basically running scared, and JD's just not letting her off the hook. Now, this kind of brings us to the broader criticisms that Kamala Harris is facing with the liberal media or just the media in general. Vance has basically been using Kamala Harris's evasiveness to his advantage, basically discrediting her and the media at the same time. That seems to be kind of like protecting her and protecting Tim Walz. Listen to how the CNN anchor constantly tries to defend and protect the interests of Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. So pay very close attention to this as I play the video. But I want you to look at this approach and how powerful it is. It's really showing the American people that the Democrats and their liberal media allies are not as untouchable as they think that they are. And I think you guys are seeing it. But it doesn't stop there either. JD Vance, he also called out Kamala Harris for her policy theft. You guys heard that just the other day, right? Kamala Harris is so desperate and lacking in originality, she's basically copying Donald Trump's policy proposal for no tax on tips. Now, Donald Trump, he brought this up months ago, and so now, after having hired 87,000 armed IRS agents to go after the average American, typically the lower income earning American, now she comes out of the blue at her Las Vegas event, her Las Vegas rally, to say that, we're going to do no tax on tips, right? So where do you think that came from? And I personally think that's a complete lie. She's not going to follow through on that. This is just pure marketing to get your vote. I mean, I don't know. If this doesn't scream desperation, I really don't know what does. So here's the part that I'm really looking forward to. JD Vance, his upcoming confrontation with CNN's Dana Bash. He's about to really try to throw some solid criticisms. But mark my words, guys, JD Vance, he's going to deliver a masterclass in handling this liberal media. So this is exactly why Donald Trump chose him as the running mate. And I think Vance knows at this point really how to play the game. So watch this, guys.
You're saying Tim Walz doesn't have affection for his wife? I don't even understand that.
I said that he acted weird, which he did, on a national stage in front of his wife and in front of millions of Americans who presumably were watching at home. And
notice how she interrupted him and tried to rephrase what he didn't say. He didn't say anything about the affection that he had for his wife. He basically commented on how he interacted with his wife on stage, and that was the part that was weird. He didn't say anything about the level of affection that Tim Walz has for his wife. So this is what they keep doing constantly.
You're saying Tim Walz doesn't have affection for his wife? I don't even understand that.
I said that he acted weird, which he did, on a national stage in front of his wife and in front of millions of Americans who presumably presumably were watching at home. I think that it's projection, Dana. Look, I think this election should be about who's going to solve the inflation crisis, who's going to make groceries and housing more affordable, who's going to secure that southern border. Kamala Harris's record is that she supported all of the policies that made that problem worse, Dana. We're trying to say we're going to take the country in a different direction. I really think that it's important to point this out, Dana. Their entire campaign has not been about, here's our policy for how we're going to make your life better, or here's what's wrong with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's policies. We're going to name call and hope that you don't notice that we don't have an agenda. That is the entire Democrat approach to this election.
They have done both. They have both policies, and they are trying to define
Dana,
it as well.
If you go to Kamala Harris's campaign page right now, they still don't have a policy.
Well, let's talk about policy
positions
versus
about what they're going to do. I think that's really insulting to Americans.
You started out talking about the policies in this interview, but you have been on the campaign trail questioning Tim Walz's military record. You say it was shameful that Governor Walz retired from the military before his unit deployed to Iraq. I want to read you something that Joe Eustace, who is a veteran, he served with Governor Walz, said. He said that's a lie. He said he was as good a soldier as you'll find. I'm not trying to defend him. I hope people don't think that. What I'm trying to do is defend someone who served his country. I'm not voting for him. I'll campaign against him, but I don't think it's fair to characterize his service the way they have. Governor Walz served 24 years.
Sure.
He even stayed after he could have retired because of 9/11, more than the country asked of him. Do you honor his service?
Well, of course, Dana, I honor his service, and I've never criticized what Tim Walz did when he was in the military. I criticized his retirement decision, and most importantly, Dana, I criticized his lying about his own record, okay? This is a guy who was captured on video saying, I carried a gun in war. He never went to war. This is a guy who's been captured on video. As other people say, he's an Afghanistan veteran. He's a veteran of a war, nodding along in agreement instead of saying, no, I did serve my country and I did it honorably, but I never went to a war zone. I'm not criticizing Tim Walz's service. I'm criticizing the fact that he lied about his service for political gain.
Wow, right? Just look at how the media, particularly CNN here, treats J.D. Vance and just Republicans in general compared to Democrats, right? This is something we've seen time and time again. J.D. Vance recently found himself right in the middle of it, but he's not taking this laying down, and he's calling it out as it happens, right? He's not letting Dana Bash of CNN reframe the question or reframe what he's saying to kind of like downgrade his explanation here, right? So, but let's start with the media's tactics that we've seen with Republicans, right? We've all seen how liberal media anchors, they have this habit of basically throwing in these statements after a Republican speaks, right? And it's kind of a real sneaky, underhanded way to try to discredit the viewer's impression of everything that they just heard, right? And the worst part about it is the tactic is never used toward Democrats. They don't do this. It's obviously a double standard, and it's designed to influence the public perception. Like I said many, many times, the media largely has been bought out by the Democratic Party. And of course, they're going to support their own. They're going to defend their own. They're going to promote their own. And this is what we're seeing here. So J.D. Vance obviously wasn't having none of that, right? So when a CNN anchor by the name of Dana Bash basically tried to pull this move on him, claiming that Kamala Harris has been discussing policies, Vance pushed back hard. He made it very clear that Kamala Harris has not been focusing on policies, contrary to popular belief in the media. He called out the media for misrepresenting the situation. And this is exactly the kind of strong, unapologetic response that we need for more of our leaders. We need some backbone here. And this is why a lot of people are really looking for Donald Trump to win this presidency come November. Now, let's talk about the Democrats. Namely, in particular, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, right? So it's real interesting how they try to project their own faults onto others, especially Donald Trump and Vance, right? So, for example, they want to call Trump and Vance weird, right? Oh, this is their $1 million solution to defending themselves and winning this election against the Republicans, Trump and Vance. They won't call them weird, right? Truth is, though, if anybody's weird here, you got to look at Tim Walz. I mean, Kamala Harris, she's pretty freaking weird too. But I'm not talking about the kind of weirdness that, that some people think might be quirky or, interesting. I'm talking about like, I don't want to be neighbors with you kind of weird, that kind of stuff. And anyway, I just think Tim Walz is unbelievably weird. And I think that if this guy came into power, America could be in a very, very horrible situation going forward, especially if his weird policies start getting implemented and promoted. I mean, think Tampon Tim. I mean, there's so many different things going on with this guy. I mean, the couple of things that come to mind are Tampon Tim. Why do you want to put tampons in the boys' bathrooms, right? Men's bathrooms having tampons. What are you trying to promote here? I think we already know what that is, right? What that's about. What is this situation going on with his love of horses? Did you guys hear this situation about Tim Walz allegedly needing his stomach pumped after a rather, let's just say, disturbing encounter with a horse? I'll just leave it there. Let me know if you guys know anything about that. But anyway, I got to say here, Tim Walz, he just personally gives me some really bad vibes, and I trust my intuition. But there's something about the way he behaves, the way he talks, acts, mannerisms. It just kind of all adds to a picture of somebody who I would not want to see in power to the extent that he's going after. Yeah, he's a governor right now, but to be a vice president of the United States, no, sir. I mean, look, there's a historical figure that people like to compare Trump to, and but when you look at Tim Walz, that's the real person that comes to mind, right? Now, don't get me wrong, guys. Being weird is not necessarily bad. I'm weird. I'm a unique person. I don't get along with everybody, but I'm not a threat to society. Tim Walz is. I mean, so anyway, so as we watch more and more of these political games unfold, keep your eyes open, guys. Pay attention. Don't fall for these woke tendencies that these left-leaning media news outlets tend to promote. But we gotta identify the media's tactics for what they are, and I'm gonna help you guys point them out when we see them. But let's get back to the video. Man, I really just got to highlight the incredible job that JD Vance is doing right now, pushing back against Dana Bash of CNN, the liberal media's narrative, guys. I mean, he's literally been nothing short of very articulate, very effective, especially when it comes to addressing how the liberal media wants to always try to twist and distort the truth to their version of the truth, which is far from it. Now, first and foremost, JD Vance's clarity and his effectiveness, I think it's worth applauding. This guy came out the gate swinging. He knows how to communicate. He's very clear. He's very concise. He doesn't let the media push him around and get away with misrepresenting his points. And when they try to frame the conversation in a way that favors their narrative, JD Vance, he's right there. He's pushing back. He's making sure that his message is clearly understood without any kind of distortion, right? For example, look at the way CNN anchor Dana Bash framed the question to him about Tim Walz's military service, right? She basically tried to shift the focus, making it seem like JD Vance was attacking Walz's service, which that wasn't happening at all. But basically, she took his valid point and tried to angle it, rephrase it in such a way where the average viewer would be like, oh, wait, is that what he meant by that? No. So JD Vance, he saw right through that. And this is the kind of underhanded crap that they try to do, right? He made it very clear that his criticism was not about Walz's service. It was about Walz's history of lying, particularly regarding his military record. So this is a very serious accusation, what's actually being called stolen valor. And this is something that a lot of veterans find deeply despicable, right? And to claim this, to claim that you've done something for your country, to claim that you've gone to war, you've gone to battle for your country when you really haven't, for political gain, that's horrible. That's horrible. Now, but let's talk a little bit about the media bias, right? There's no secret that you got outlets like CNN and people like Dana Walsh often going to great lengths to defend the Democratic Party. I mean, in this case, they've been defending Tim Walz, meanwhile downplaying or straight up outright ignoring the legitimate concerns of veterans who think that Walz lied about his service. So it's really frustrating, but it's not surprising at the same time. Like, we all know that if the roles were reversed, if a Republican was accused of the same thing, media would be all over it. They'd be all over it. Imagine Donald Trump claimed to have, let's just say Donald Trump was in the military, never went to war. If he claimed to have gone to war or, fired a weapon on behalf of the country and it didn't really happen, they would be all over it. There would be no leniency. There would be no benefit of the doubt, nothing. They would be all over it. Tim Walz does the exact same thing, and they're defending him, talking about, oh, he misspoke. Really? He didn't misspeak. He didn't misspeak multiple times during multiple different situations and interviews and whatnot. So, but again, JD Vance, he's not letting them get away with this. He's out there. He's defending those veterans who feel that they were betrayed by Walz, and he's making sure that their voices get heard. So big ups to JD Vance, but let's get back to the video.
Dana. Now, I served in the United States Marine Corps, and you know this. And look, there are a lot of things that I'm proud about. I've never lied about what I did or overstated it because it would be beneficial to me in an election. I think that's what Tim Walz did. That's what I was criticizing. And yes, I do think it's scandalous behavior.
You talked about one of the things that he said, weapons of war. He was talking in a campaign stop about, he was trying to talk about gun control.
Sure.
And he said, weapons of war I carried in war. I will say that the Harris-Walz campaign did say that the governor misspoke there.
Sure.
Do you accept that?
He misspoke. Another word is that he lied about it, and he didn't correct the record for 15 years until he was put under political pressure because I called it out, Dana. Whatever you want to call it, a misspeaking or a lie, I think Tim Walz should have to correct the record. Now, you pointed out a soldier who defended his service. There have been a number of soldiers who served with Tim Walz who have criticized him on the exact same grounds that I have because it's not right to misstate or to embellish what you've done, and I think that's what he did.
And on the question of when he left the National Guard, he filed his election paperwork February 10th, 2005. That was a month before the National Guard even announced that it was possible that they would deploy to Iraq, and it ended up being 2 months. He retired 2 months before they actually got the paperwork.
But on CNN last night, Dana, one of the people who was actually in charge of him said they knew they were going to deploy to Iraq in February of 2004, fall of 2004. So he knew he was going to Iraq. He decided to quit, to retire, whatever word you want to use.
Retire.
Because he wanted to run for Congress. He lied about that. He said that when he decided to retire, he did not know that he was going to Iraq. That is another untruth, as even his senior military officer said. So again, I'm not criticizing the service. I'm criticizing the dishonesty. Dishonesty spoken in favor and for the purpose of political benefit. And I think that the most important thing here, Dana, is it goes to Kamala Harris's judgment. Tim Walz is ultimately going to be the vice president. Kamala Harris is in great health. I'm sure she's going to be president if she wins for 4 or maybe even 8 years. Why did Kamala Harris choose a person who has lied about their military service? I think that is a serious lapse in judgment. And I don't want to hear from a campaign spokesperson of Kamala Harris. I want to hear Kamala Harris herself address what I just said.
You know, I've seen a lot of statements from veterans, including those you served with, saying it's just untoward to be criticizing somebody who served for 24 years.
Dana, I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans groups who criticize Tim Walz. The question is, he said he served in war, and he didn't. That is a dishonesty. I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is. The truth is that Tim Walz didn't tell the truth. And importantly, Dana, this is about Kamala Harris's judgment. And I think that when you ask, why has Kamala Harris allowed the border to be wide open? Why has Kamala Harris supported policies that have promoted the increase in inflation? I think it goes to the heart of her judgment, and I think that that's what we should be talking about.
One last question. Donald Trump didn't serve in the military. he received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to avoid serving in the Vietnam War, reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem.
JD Vance, masterful at this here, guys. See, what Dana's trying to do here, they're trying to basically take the heat off of Tim Walz's lies and deflect them onto Donald Trump. Okay, Donald Trump allegedly had bone spurts to get out of, serving in the Vietnam War or whatever. But here's the thing. Notice how JD Vance doesn't allow CNN anchor to pin this blame to basically put the heat on Donald Trump. Donald Trump, according to JD Vance, is not lying. And that's the key. That is the key underlying argument from JD Vance. Dana, CNN, they're basically trying to make it look like JD Vance is not or disrespecting the 24 years of service from Tim Walz. And that's not the issue here. But she keeps trying to make that the issue when it's not.
I don't criticize anybody, whether they served our country or not. I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving. I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying, I went to war. Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said, I went to war, but he didn't actually? That seems to be a problem to me.
Well, they've corrected that. Let's move on to...
They've corrected it by admitting that he lied.
Let's move on to another important issue to vote.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we don't want to talk about that. Let's move on to the next issue. This is how they do.
And that is the issue of abortion. You wrote the foreword for a new book by Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts of Project 2025. Project 2025, among many other things, calls for rolling back approval of the abortion drug mifepristone. Donald Trump told me during the debate that he would not block the drug. And on Thursday, when he was asked, he didn't rule it out. So which is it?
Well, look, Dana, first of all, Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. Kevin Roberts is a friend of mine, but I wouldn't say that he speaks for the president in the same way I wouldn't say that he speaks for me. Now, what Donald Trump has said is that he respects the Supreme Court's opinion on the mifepristone ruling.
But let me just stop you right there. The Supreme Court, you're a lawyer, so you know this better than I.
Sure.
The Supreme Court, all they did was say that what came to them didn't have standing. So they let it stand. A real question, a substantive question, hasn't made it to the Supreme Court. So my question for you is whether or not a Trump-Vance administration would allow mifepristone to continue to be sent around the country.
Well, President Trump won the nomination of the Republican Party. He said it to you, and he said it repeatedly, that his goal is not to block mifepristone, it's to let states make the decision on abortion policy. Now, of course, that does mean, Dana, we have to be honest about this, that California might have less restrictive rules than Ohio, which might have less restrictive rules than Alabama. I think what President Trump is really trying to do on the abortion question is really admirable, and I wish the press was a little bit more honest about it. He's saying we've had a 50-year culture war over abortion, where unfortunately this issue has just divided the country, and he wants to provide some ground for us to come together, for states to make these decisions, for voters to make these decisions, and for us all to respect one another. That's all he's
on
proposed.
that issue, a few months.
We got to talk about how JD Vance is doing an outstanding job, guys, in challenging the media's defense to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I mean, he's showing persistence and clearly a willingness to stand his ground, even when he's confronted by liberal media figures who are just way too eager to defend their the indefensible. I mean, first of all, JD Vance, his persistence is definitely something to admire. I mean, when the media, specifically a certain female anchor, tried to defend Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, JD didn't back down. He saw right through their tactics and he straight up called them out. The media's defense of Walz, in particular, it really just kind of feels like it's like their way of kind of giving up. They realize that he's a weak pick for Kamala Harris. They know the truth is on JD Vance's side. And if you notice, every time he calls her out, every time he stops the interview, he's correcting her, and she doesn't have a comeback for that, because the truth once the truth comes to light, you can't refute that. And that is clearly what we've seen today, right? Their only strategy is to try to deflect, try to distract you. But JD Vance he's sharp, he's concise, he's articulate, he's paying attention. He's not letting them get away with that. So let's be real clear about the media's defense strategy. Whenever they're confronted with facts, like the allegations that Tim Walz lied about his military service, the stolen valor, the media did not address the issue head on. Instead, what they try to do is they try to appeal to the respect that Walz's 24 years of service should be, should be commended, right? And it's not that his 24 years shouldn't be commended, but let's be real here. This tactic is constantly being used because they can't effectively counter the fact that Walz allegedly embellished his service record for political gain. And it's a classic case of trying to shift the narrative because they don't have a solid defense. So why does this matter? Well, the reason why it matters is because J.D. Vance rightly ties the issue of stolen valor directly to Kamala Harris's judgment. Why would Kamala Harris choose somebody with credible allegations of lying about their military service as a running mate? This is not a trustworthy person. This is a bad judgment call on Kamala Harris's side. And this also raises a number of very serious questions. Did he not properly vet Walz? Did she not properly vet Walz? Or even worse, did she even know about the issue and then still ended up choosing him to be her running mate? I mean, either way, this doesn't do anything less than speaking to the poor judgment on behalf of Kamala Harris, right? And also let's talk about Kamala's preparedness. Like, it's becoming increasingly clear that she and her team were not ready for the controversy surrounding Tim Walz's military claims. It's like they were caught on their heels. They weren't ready. They were stumbling. I mean, they haven't provided a single clear explanation or even defense, which only makes the situation even worse. And if they were prepared, they should have a statement ready. They would have, if they were prepared, they would have had a statement ready. They would have had the ability to quickly address the issue, and they would have done it directly, but they didn't. And this is clearly a lack of preparation, again, reflecting very, very poorly on Kamala Harris's ability to lead. She can't even lead her running mate. So at the end of the day, it's not just about J.D. Vance calling out the lies. It's about character judgment. It's about qualities. It's about the lack of policies that Kamala Harris is talking about. It's about the lack of policies that Kamala Harris has implemented during her 3.5 years in the White House already and the destruction of America. So anyway, hats off to J.D. Vance for standing firm. If you guys haven't already, please take a second, hit the like button for the video. I totally appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. For those of you guys who are already subscribed, thank you for making sure you're still subscribed. And thanks so much for sharing these videos on Facebook and Twitter. I'll see you guys on the next one.